news item. So Yaku, what we'll do is we'll keep your topic for next month as well. Okay, so you'll at least have a full audience to go through those items on. Okay.
Thanks, man.
So let's just bring this up in the news. So just a couple of the news items I've picked up. The public preview of the wrap for Power Apps is now available. This is great news, so we can start creating mobile apps from our Power Apps. That is awesome to see. We announced this last year, and now it's at least the public preview is here. A couple of things to note. It is only available in the North America environment at this stage. So if you are creating an environment, make sure you set the United States and make sure you set create database, and that will give you the option to start installing the wrap feature. You do need to add it into your environment. There is a package that you got to install that's called Wrap Preview for Power Apps. And then once you've done that, you can start creating mobile apps from your Power Apps. Just key thing to note, this is public preview, so don't use it for any production applications, please. Get the real users to test it out and provide the feedback. The teams have created a couple of links for feedback to be sent on, and if you do need any support, there is also a couple of emails in there. What I'll do is I'll pop those into the chat window just now, just so that you've got them and that info. Okay. Next one that I came across was we've got a new Power App application for Windows. So for those of you who have been working with Power Apps for a while, you used to remember we used to have a Windows app that we could use to run Power Apps. That was mostly focused on Canvas apps, if I remember. But we've now got a new Power Apps application running on Windows that's going to handle your Canvas apps as well as your model-driven apps. And what's great is we'll also make use of all the device functionality. So if you've got barcode scanners connected to your PC or the cameras, those will integrate just like they do on the mobile. And you can also build the offline apps to work inside there as well on top of Windows. So this is great to see. It's been something we've been wanting for a while since the last one was decommissioned. Other one that came through that was also really exciting was the Power Platform API. So as we know, Power Platform has grown exponentially, and most of the ways that we interact with it was through the PowerShell module or the Power Platform for Admins Management connector in Power Automate. So now we've got a Power Platform REST API that you would be able to make use of. This was introduced on the 31st of March. It's also in public preview. So think of it as this acts as a gateway or a single API that harmonizes all the internal APIs for each feature within the Power Platform. So we've got a single endpoint, which is api.powerplatform.com, for you to use along with a unified set of permissions and claims that can be requested from Azure Active Directory. So this really helps us move along forward this way, and it gives us a new way to interact with the platform. And then lastly, the general availability of pay-as-you-go for Power Apps is now here. So what this means is instead of you licensing users individually, you now can tie it to an Azure subscription, and then depending on how these apps get utilized, it would go off on your Azure subscription instead. So to enable this, what you would need to do is on your Power Platform Admin Center, you would need to associate your environment with an Azure subscription. Then you can start building your apps and sharing your apps, and the bill will be shown in the Azure Cost Center. So you would be able to go into the Azure portal and see how your users are consuming it. I know this is going to be very attractive for a lot of customers. It gives you all the functionality of the premium capabilities, but at least this way it is on a per user basis and only when the users are making use of it. So if you've got a drop off in certain months, you would only pay for those individual users, which is quite nice and quite attractive. I know there's always big discussions around the licensing, but at least this way it makes it a little bit more attractive for anyone. Okay. Is there any questions or anything anyone else has seen or noted that you feel is important to share? Just in the news? Perfect. So those are the main news items that I picked up over the last couple of days. So that should be great. The next one, which we were going to open up, Michael, I don't know if you want to open up on the community discussion, just the thoughts around that.
Yeah, maybe just before I do that, there was the BizApps launch event last week, where Microsoft reveals Power Platform and Dynamics 365 new features coming soon.
Okay.
And there was actually quite a lot that they demonstrated and talked about, and it covered Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, RPA, and the different modules in Dynamics 365. So it was quite cool. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of
Is it available? Is it still
well,
available
you can go and
for
watch the
streaming?
recording. Yeah,
Is
yeah,
it?
you can go
Okay.
watch the recording. Yeah, you just Google what's it, BizApps event April, and you'll probably find it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and it
The
was
BizApps
really
is
cool because
it's normally quite a long session, and this is just, I think, a sneak preview or like a roadmap type shorter version. I did receive the link to watch the streaming event afterwards, and I've scheduled it for when I'm on leave later this week, because I didn't see it last week. But I think it'll probably be about an hour and a half, something around that duration, as opposed to the normal BizApps thing, which is, like hours and hours and hours and different streams and options and this and that and whatever.
Yeah. It's just over an hour and a half. Cool.
So just a quick question around the Power Virtual Agent, right? So Power Virtual Agents at the moment for the South African market isn't something that, well, barely anyone can afford the cost. So not so much the setting it up and building it, but the actual cost for each interaction, right? And then there's also, so now on the D365 side, there's no omni-channel license available anymore either. So is there something that you guys have maybe heard of, or something that's coming to the South African market that will assist us with something like this? Or because I mean, other than a bot or a Power Virtual Agent to assist with omni-channel, is there something that you guys have heard of maybe that will assist? Or because we've got clients that are looking for omni-channel at the moment and it's not available. So I know I've seen that they've put on add-ons and everything, and the only other thing that I could maybe think of was maybe using Power Virtual Agent as a bot for them, in case they don't want to build a bot from scratch, and then maybe look at something like a Teams integration into CRM, so that we could surface that. Or I don't know. I don't know what has anyone got any ideas or something?
Yeah, look, I can certainly contribute some to the conversation. So I haven't had customers saying that the Power Virtual Agent is not affordable. In fact, we've got quite a few customers using it in South Africa. So yeah, I think maybe what we should do is, if you have a specific customer that you want to talk to, we can, maybe chat over email offline or have a separate call. But Power Virtual Agent is Microsoft's strategy for conversational AI, well, for conversations. Conversational AI, automated conversations. And then with the ability to bring in complex or out of the box scenarios through Azure bot skills or composer skills. So, the whole of Microsoft, irrespective of what the scenario is, if you want to build a solution that has a conversation with a bot, Power Virtual Agent is Microsoft's recommended solution. And from a Dynamics 365 perspective, it's also there for the conversational bot that can intercept or front end before you get to a human conversation, with that handoff to D365 Omnichannel and integrated with D365 Omnichannel. And in fact, it goes a step further. It's also the IVR capability for Dynamics 365 Omnichannel Voice. So if you phone in and you want IVR or the bot to talk to you, physically talk to you, and you talk to the bot, that's Power Virtual Agent. And Mornay and I have actually been playing with that quite recently and setting that up and getting it working and stuff for Dynamics. So yeah, so that's, Microsoft, I guess the official view is that the Power Virtual Agent is the conversational bot platform for Microsoft, with or without Dynamics. But when you obviously have Dynamics and you have Omnichannel, then it's just a component that just kind of natively plugs in and hands off context and the full conversation to Dynamics 365 Omnichannel.
Perfect, thank you.
So, and then also
Jaco?
just bear in mind that there's a PVA for Teams.
Yeah.
So, there's no additional licensing for that if customers already own Teams. So especially for like internal conversations where they want, like maybe it's a little HR bot or some internal Teams-based discussions with the bot, then they don't even have to go up to the more premium Power Virtual Agent and pay per, interactions. And I remember it was what was it about? You buy it in batches of 2,000 conversations.
Yes, yeah.
And a conversation
That's the
lasts, I
full
think,
license,
X amount of minutes or Y amount of turns.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it was per interaction, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
with the
and
Teams
it's per
version of Power Virtual
conversation.
Agents,
Yeah, so just bear
there's
in
no
mind, it's per
limit on that.
conversation.
Yeah.
So I'll come back to it's per conversation as opposed to interaction. So
Yes,
in other words,
yes,
if I
yes.
say hi and you say hi back, that's
Yep.
still one conversation. We can have a conversation
yes,
for
yes.
several minutes. It's still one.
Yeah,
Considered
it's
one.
basically per session, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mark,
Jaco?
the
Yeah.
Teams version, that's not, there's no limit on the number of conversations on that one, hey?
I think there is. There are some, I can't remember, there's a table, and maybe I can just quickly search for it and plug it in the IM window, but there is a table online. There are some limitations. In fact, I actually think it's in the licensing guide, the Power Virtual Agent licensing guide. I think it's in there. There's a little table of what it can and can't do. And for example, it cannot use premium connectors, just like Power Apps and Teams doesn't use premium connectors. So similar type of thing. Yeah.
Jaco?
Jonathan, and we just go back to that that wrapper that you just showed, because I don't think it's the same thing, because I remember for portals there was that progressive web app, right, where you could essentially wrap the portal as a mobile app. Is that something different to what this wrapper is, or what exactly is this?
It is different. It performs the same functionality, but I think it is a separate component that we're bringing in. So there was that one for portals.
Basically, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so it was the portals one that came out first, and that allowed you to create the mobile apps from your portals. And this one now is specifically for Power Apps.
For Canvas apps. For
Canvas apps, correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around this, mind the pun. So the idea would be you create the Canvas app, and then, because I remember the portal one, you would have your portal pages, but you would then sort of wrap it into this PWA, and then publish like an icon or something on your on your mobile app, Android or iPhone, and then from there you essentially click the icon and it opens and it runs the app in the context of this PWA wrapper. So it's the same thing essentially.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
essentially. So that you can it makes it easier to distribute them to a certain point. Yeah, Mark?
Yeah, but still the fundamental rules apply in who the target audience is. So your portal
absolutely.
is still generally for guests, anonymous and kind of external partners. And yes, there's now essentially a checkbox when you design a portal. There's a little slider you can switch on and say, make it, PWA enabled. And it's essentially putting a bunch of specific JavaScript and HTML within the application, so that if you open it with your browser, you'll see a little icon flashing on your bar that says, add this as an app to your taskbar. So it's making it a PWA, or let's say that the HTML and JavaScript that your portal kind of generates is PWA compliant, if you want to call it that. Whereas the other one is still more for your internal users. But instead of enforcing the app to kind of run inside of the Power App Player app, you can actually submit it to the iOS or Android stores, or like the Intune store, and it will be a kind of native app. So I think what happens, I don't know, is someone on the back end, when you submit your app through this wrap program, I don't know how automated it is, but maybe there's some human interaction, I don't know. And then they wrap it for you and make sure it works as a native app. Maybe there's some very specific things. They're actually converting your app in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, because when we faced this, this was quite a while ago, we essentially had the request from the customer that says they want to put it into an app store and then have the ability for them to go to the app store and then get this portal page, right? This was for one of these COVID applications that we wrote for citizens to go and register and blah, blah, blah. And back then it was still, you had to manually convert all those pages to PWA. It didn't have the the button click like you said now. So I guess this is exactly the same. I know the user audience would be different, but ideally you just want your users to go to the app store and go get the application and click a button and it installs it and it sits there and you can consume it. But it also renders slightly different though. Like you just said, it doesn't render using the Canvas app engine. It's going to render probably using this wrapper or something along those lines. Okay, cool, gotcha. I just wanted to double check because I didn't actually read the whole thing when you announced it. It was a bit too quick for me. So
no problem. Yeah, I'm putting into the chat window just the how-to guide. It just takes you through the process and explains how to go through everything, what it ends up looking like, and how to distribute it over the App Store. So
awesome, thank you.
Check that out. But yeah, just a thing to remember, you do still need the licenses in order to open up and utilize the app. So you're really focused on internal users and partners and that you're working with.
Yeah, I think it's the benefits really the distribution of the app. That's where this that's the selling point of it.
Yeah, and it's like if you add it to the Intune store, it can be easy to provision onto the people's devices as well, so it's there for them.
Exactly. Right, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Zachary.
And there's also something interesting there, which is that third point, embed multiple Canvas apps into a single mobile app. And I know a lot of not a lot, but several of our sample apps that Microsoft provides are built in this way. If you look at the employee experience app, which kind of, like when you look at it as an end user, it's got like this hamburger menu, and then you click it and then you get like 6 different icons, one for kudos, one for vacation, one for communication, and those are actually all implemented as separate apps. And so in the past, when you clicked it, you would actually see the other app launch. It was like a bit of an interesting experience. But they liked to build them as separate apps because then they could have separate developers build them, and I guess maybe there was some performance elements or something related to having them separate. But now when you bring them all together into a single app, you won't get that kind of like a reloading experience when you open up those other apps from that like hamburger menu. It'll appear as one app.
Yeah, that's very cool. I'm going to definitely look at this.
So it's a similar experience to our OneHub app, hey, Mike?
Yes. Yes, the My Hub.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
what I don't know about this third point, which I think is an interesting discussion, well, it's not even a discussion, we need to go find out, is the license implication, because you have this concept of a per app license, right? So in the normal model that we've had up until today, if you build your 4 apps as 4 separate apps, but they come together in one just through like a common navigation, it's still 4 apps. So the per app license wouldn't cover it. You'd need to have 4 per app licenses or the per user license. Whereas if this happens now in this 0.3 here, essentially it looks like they get compiled into a single mobile app.
How is that going to
Compiled
be
in quotes.
classified?
Yeah. Is this now 1 app or is this still 4 apps? That I don't know. And that could be interesting.
No, it could be. Oh, awesome. Great points. Anything else that anyone wants to add? Or Mike, do you think we should jump into the other discussion points that we had?
Or whatever anyone wants to discuss, I think is useful.
Yeah.
And welcome, Mboneni.
Hey, we have had someone else join. Yes, welcome.
Yeah, the conversation topic was going to be, and we can do it now and do it next week. Next time it'll be interesting. Is often I get the question, and I even have this even in my own mind, is when you build a Canvas Power App, do you first kind of make it usable? You put all your UI elements, you create all your pages, your screens, you put on all your controls, you make it look exactly how you want it to work, but you don't connect it to any data or data sources. Do you do that first and then connect it to the data sources, kind of like, and then enable it, like with real stuff? And maybe even as part of that, you might mock up data sources in application on start. So you might, create some fake data sets that you bind your tables through, your drop downs to, etc. So you kind of make it visually work and logically work before you actually connect it to stuff. Or do you first just kind of get it connected and working to the data, and then reformat the screens, make it look pretty, etc. So which approach do you do? And then I guess it comes on to some similar topics around, is Power Apps a good tool to mock up designs of apps, or should we use something else? Kind of like if you were going to build something for users, kind of mock it up in Power Apps first. It's not working, but get the approval until that's how they want it, and then kind of enable it. Or do you mock it up in another tool? Yeah, so this was the discussion point, and I'd be interested if anyone's building apps, what they're doing.
So
I like Paul's comments. Function first, and then we add the lipstick. Usually, that's a great point.
So Michael, the way I used to approach it, right, whether it was in Dynamics, so that the new model-driven apps, or Canvas apps, is we kind of did the. I mean, I guess with Dynamics it was a little bit different because you could quickly spin up a form, and then show it to the customer. Well, what I did was, if we take visualization aside, but let's separate that. We take a Canvas app, and we know that look and feel is going to be very important, right? Dynamics, the model-driven app, we kind of have one look and feel, so let's forget about that. So if we take a Canvas app, what we used to do is we'd obviously sketch it out first on a whiteboard, during envisioning, agree with the customer this is what it's going to look like, and then we'll actually build it out. You can quickly go and spin it up in your environment, build out the very high level app, but there's no smarts behind it, right? You don't connect it to the data source. If you click on a button, it doesn't actually do something, and you then take that the customer through those step-by-step forms and what it would look like. You get agreement on that, and then you can go link it to your, to your back end. You link it to you start automating it, and then that's where I typically want the UI developers or the UI designers to come in and sort of put the lipstick on, like Paul's saying. That was my approach that I found had the least rework on the application.
Yeah.
But I don't do
No,
apps
good
anymore,
point,
so that argument could be null and void now. So
No, it still makes sense and it's still
yeah.
relevant. Like a lot of my experience that I have, and mine is mostly through running hackathons with customers. And usually what they do is we get the data structure sorted out first, so they understand what their skills and the data looks like. And then I've seen a lot of them, what they do is they'll do a mock-up of the app in PowerPoint or even Visio. And they get their process flows and all of that designed in Visio before they even start building. And I see this trend a lot between multiple customers, and it seems to work pretty well. So by the time they get to the Power App, they already know exactly what it needs to look like, what their data sources are, and they can start doing everything in that during that time. So I find it helps with the end results coming out a lot quicker doing it that way around, from what I've seen through the various hacks that I've run over the last year. Yeah, Mona.
I think some of the stuff that I've seen is like you're saying, there's a mock-up design because a lot of the time certain functionality needs to be either approved, access needs to be approved, or even things like it needs to go through an architecture review board, right?
Yeah.
So I guess what the thing is that you can build out the layouts and the look and the feels, and then obviously later on, when people approve how this thing should work, how it should scale, what's the security around it, all of those type of things, that's when you start hooking things up, right?
Yeah.
So that's some of the things I've seen, because also what happens is when let's say you start with the data first approach, a lot of like we were at a customer where, for instance, we built out a Power App, and halfway through the app, we quickly realized that, half of the user base will have access to Exchange Online and the other half will be still on premise. So those type of things creep in, and that caused quite a bit of delay, because now it's like everything is halted until either, migrate this thing or migrate the users in the cloud, or select what is the strategy going forward for accessing and sending emails and how that should look like. So there's quite a few things that I've noticed, goes into this. And I guess another part is essentially how do you move this between environments, right? So the whole DevOps and pipeline of things needs to be in place in order to really, progress the app between the different stages and environments and those type of things. So those are the requests I've seen quite a lot, is that, not just, yes, we can build apps and we've got a company brand that it needs to look like, but, how do we make sure that when we roll this out, we can quickly and easily scale it to multiple departments that's, geolocated, as well as, how do we package this and have a DevOps story around it. So that's the type of things I've seen. Yeah.
That's actually a good point, Mona. When you are working with customers and they're building their first apps and flows and that, are you advising them, or do they start building out directly in solutions, or are they just building out the apps individually?
So I'm seeing more and more the guys that have got I want to say build out a few apps, right? Would build it in solutions and move it around between the different solutions. And, we tend to always try to push that best practices as well.
Yeah.
Especially when it's in the enterprise, right? I guess when it comes to smaller customers, there's other challenges. It's not necessarily them building out flows or those type of things, but it's things like connectors that's causing issues because they got too many requests, or the throttling issues, those type of things. That is kind of more that we see than than building it in their own personal environment, right? But that said, I think that landing a COE is essential to all of this, right? So regardless of how you do it, the COE and the insights that the COE can give you is so essential, right? Because you can very quickly go and see who's doing what, and also orphaned apps, right? We're sitting in a situation now where in the organization, people have built a bunch of apps that's floating around, and unfortunately they left the organization and nobody knows who's maintaining those apps, firstly. And I think secondly is kind of like, are they still being used in production, or by what users, right? So those type of things also happen, right? Where the ownership of those apps kind of, sits with a individual, especially when they start building things in their own environment, and then they're just shared with everybody that needs access. So yeah.
Okay. Cool. Mike, this fluid UI, this looks quite cool. Have you used it before?
Like for 2 minutes. Like you go and you create yourself an account, and then it's quite cool. It's got lots of UI elements that are put together already for you. So like a tabs plus the back arrow plus the underlines and all that stuff, like as a header for a list, and then you just drag that in, and then there's like a list, and then you add, and then it's also like you can say, okay, I'm using it, I want the iOS UI or Android UI. So Android is something called material design, and so then it formats it to that, and like it's very cool. It looks like, I mean, I haven't used it in anger. Literally, I've just dragged some stuff onto a screen and thought, that's actually quite cool.
Yeah. And I'm looking at creating accounts. So you can get your layouts done pretty nicely and everything else. Yeah, double clicking here to start your first page. Okay, there we go. Oh, this looks quite nice. Okay, then you got all your components and bars and that on the left-hand side you can bring in. Okay, that's cool. Let's check it out.
You guys remember the stencil days, the CRM 2015 wireframe template and stencils that you could download? So you had these Visio packs that was available that you could like do one for a form, one for a dashboard, one for the nav bar.
Yes.
I still actually have these on my machine. I'm just checking them now. So
Oh.
we used to use those a lot.
Yeah.
The world has got a lot sexier since then. So
yeah. And a lot simpler to do things.
yeah. I also remember there was Excel templates at one point where you literally had to drag like your button on the Excel cell, and then your forms were actually mocked up that way.
Yeah.
Monet would probably remember that. So.
In actual fact, you can, and I've done this the other day. So you can download the sketch and stencil pack and icons in SVG format and reuse it in Visio. And there's and there's also I think it's a flow to Visio integration that you also can do. So you build out the flow, and then you can present it in Visio. So there's those type of things that you can do.
But didn't XRM also have tools like that? That XRM tool thing where you could like mock something up and then spin it out into a Visio or something?
There might be.
Yeah, that sounds familiar, but anyway.
I think with the old things that you could do a entity design that you generate.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. I remember that. But there was something different where it created some sort of flow chart or something in Visio for you. I can't really, but I remember that was actually very cool that you could do the ERDs based on your database.
Yeah. I won't be surprised if there is things in the common data model that you can do these type of things with, so that if you have to create a model that says, okay, this is how a entity or table should look that represents a, I don't know, customer. You know, that this is how it links together, and there's all the related tables and all those type of things.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Anything else from anyone? Anything you want to add? Floor's open. Hey, perfect. So then I think
there's one other thing
yes.
that might slightly be off topic, but still related, and it's to that design question around, you know, how do you typically design those forms? And I found what we also that we unfortunately don't have access to those the software anymore, but it was those cartoon generated generation software. So essentially you would start the journey of the actual persona, right? So I don't know, again, back to this COVID situation, you had a person who logs into a laptop, they go and register, for an appointment, they reach the appointment, somebody waits there with a, Canvas app, and they scan them. So what we did in MCS before I left was we mocked up the journey using these cartoon personas, but inside those journeys, you would essentially embed the mocked up, forms and stuff that you're using in Canvas app or model driven app to represent what that person would see in that storyline. And customers ate that stuff up for like sweet cake. When I saw that whole journey with how the screen looks, it's like the easiest sell in the world to get them on board. So that worked really, really well. Not just screens and stuff in isolation.
And what tools did you use for that, Joki?
Sorry, just say again.
What tools did you use for that? For the cartooning, or the journey, and the screens?
Yeah, let me quickly, give me a minute or two. Let me just go and find it. It's been it's probably been a year since I've used that. But I know we had some sort of license in MCS to use. That's and just before I left, they revoked the agreement between Microsoft and that company. I don't know if there's been a change to that, but give me a minute or two and I'll find you the name now.
Paint, MS Paint.
No, nothing as modern as that more now, unfortunately. So
maybe whiteboard or
so I wanted to say Beyond, but it's not Beyond. But let me just go and double check. I can actually show you while I'm looking for that. I think I still have an example of one of the things we did for 2 of the projects. If you guys want to see it,
you're allowed to show it.
Yeah, you're allowed to show. That's the only thing.
Yeah, actually I am, because
sensitive
it's like
customer information.
No, I've cleaned it up for another scenario, and it's not customer sensitive anymore. I just need to go and find it. But if you guys want to talk about something else, then I'll try and see if I can find it and show you something.
Gents, I'm going to drop off. I'm new to Power Apps, so I've got nothing to contribute other than anything to do with Power BI. Anyway, thanks for the time, and I'll just attend the next one in the hopes that there are more guests.
Awesome.
And obviously looking forward to the main topic, which has been postponed. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Sven.
Cool. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
You too, man.
Cheers.
All right.
Cheers.
So I found the sort of the cleaned up version. That isn't for a customer. If you guys want to see it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, please.
Cool. 2 minutes. Well, now you're more than welcome to drop. So essentially, you'd have your your overview of the process, right? So, you know, step one, the passenger registers before they enter the country. Then step two, you know, is they receive the QR code directly to their mobile. They arrive, you know, in the actual country, and then somebody is there to actually, you know, scan their QR code, and then they do the test. And this was very early days of COVID. They actually scan them, and they'll have all the details because they registered on the portal. And then they give them a swab kit. They do the actual, you know, they take a photo of the actual testing kit. They link it to that person, and then they send them to go and queue for a batching application. For another person to then do the actual test, and then that app sends it to the laboratory through like Power Automate, and the results are then sent back, you know, to the actual customer on their mobile app to tell them, you know, if they are you know, positive, negative, or if they need to self-isolate. So essentially, this was like a very basic journey. You know, the traveler fills in the detail. It's a little bit small, but let me just make that bigger and do this quickly. Okay, so traveler goes into the app, and here you can see there's the mock-up screens with it. I've just cleaned it out a little bit. There's an example of the, you know, the email that they'll get with the QR code. They then get there, person then scans that QR code for them. And, you know, they are then given a unique barcode. So the person would scan the actual barcode on the testing kit. That links it then to this person that they've just identified. Then they go to a queue, you know, based on, there were several priorities based on which queue they go to. That person then swaps them and, you know, basically then submits it. And then we also showed, okay, this was still incomplete, how they actually mock this up, you know, to see, you know, how many visitors there are, how many are positive, negative. And then that was just, so it's not completely this cleaned out version, but the other one had all the proper screenshots and stuff in there that we embedded so that the customer could see what it looks like. And this journey thing is what we found was really, really nice for customers to get them on board on Canvas apps and the overall sort of sign off on the screens. Yep.
Yeah, it really helps them see what the entire process is going to look like end to end and understand why you're bringing everything in, as opposed to just showing them some screens. So
yeah, and I think the tool was called Vyond, if I remember correctly.
Vyond.
Yeah, VYOND. So you can create. So you actually all those little characters you saw, right? Those are, you can create videos from that. So you know, it's almost like those. You say to the little character, okay, stand there, now stand there, and then the animation for them to walk to that specific place is already, you know, done for you by the software. Or you will click on the character and say, the character needs a laptop in hand and they need to sit down, and then the software just, you know, transforms that character into the pose with the stuff in their hand, or, you know, whatever you need to do. So it's very, very interactive. And then you can take screenshots of your videos from there. So it's worth maybe finding out if Microsoft do still have like an enterprise license for that software.
Yeah, let me just try and get this URL. It's Vyond. It looks quite cool. Yeah,
Vyond.com, yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
Anyways, it's a little bit off topic, but I found that tool really, really nice to work with. So yeah.
And did this do the screen mock-ups as well for you, or was this for the?
No. So unfortunately, the screen mock-ups, you know, we transpose that from another tool into the Vyond screens.
Okay.
So you know, typically you just grab a screenshot and then paste it into your video. But just, I mean, it was more about the journey than, you know, the design. So that was the point I'm trying to make. Don't just go in isolation and try and sell, you know, even if the screens are really pretty, if the customer doesn't understand the journey of that persona, then they sometimes struggle to understand, you know, what it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah, what's the point? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What's in it for me, right? So because it's that like the day in the life of scenarios that we, we'd sit with a specific user and find out exactly what it is that they do, and then start drawing up that sort of plan for them of the journey. I do miss that. Now that I'm talking about this like stuff, it's something I'm missing now very badly, is that like the envisioning stuff and that I used to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting all teary-eyed now, so.
Don't cry. Don't cry. Okay, that's cool. I
Awesome.
also at one stage investigated the cartoon, not the cartoon, the sketching, the drawing. Sometimes you watch these videos and there's like a voiceover, and then someone like, they drawing a character, and then suddenly there's a flag, and then the person picks up the flag, like it draws it out, so you have like an animation, and there's also software for that as well, which is all online and pretty easy to use, it would appear, but I've never used it. But it's always also another nice way to tell a story, instead of just like using a PowerPoint presentation.
Folks, I'm going to have to drop. Please excuse me, but have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks.
And I'm looking forward to the next session. Well,
yeah, perfect.
Goodbye, Morne.
Yeah, I think we are at 5 o'clock and people are going to start getting hit by load shedding. So I think let's call it, unless anyone wants to raise anything else.
Good from my side.
Perfect. Okay, well, gents, thanks for joining. I see we've lost a couple of people straight away. So thanks for your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month. Thanks, Paul, for joining. Thanks, Aku.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Thanks, Ed.
Cheers. Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye.